Mornings used to be predictable. I'd roll out of bed, pour myself a cup of coffee, and settle into the usual routine. No second guessing, no paranoia, just the same familiar rhythm I had come to rely on. It was the kind of simple comfort that made life feel stable. But that was before I saw the cup. It was an ordinary Wednesday. Nothing unusual, no warning signs flashing in my face. The sun filtered in through the blinds, stretching across the floor in thin, golden stripes. I took my coffee out onto the small balcony, letting the crisp morning air push against my skin as I stood there, sipping slowly, half lost in thought. That was when I noticed it. A coffee mug, sitting right there on the neighbor's balcony railing. At first, it barely registered. Just a plain, white ceramic cup, nothing special. But then my gaze lingered, my brain processing something that didn't quite add up. My fingers tightened slightly around my own mug as the recognition settled in. It was the same exact kind we had in our kitchen. Not just similar. The same brand, the same simple design. But what really made my stomach twist was the chip on the handle. A tiny imperfection that I remembered all too well. I had chipped that cup months ago while washing dishes, knocking it against the sink. I had muttered a curse, ready to toss in the trash, but my wife, Claire, had stopped me. She had plucked it from my hands with a small laugh, shaking her head. "It still holds coffee, doesn't it?" she had teased. I stood there on the balcony, my pulse pounding as I stared at that chipped mug, sitting right there on his balcony. Dan, our neighbor, was nowhere to be seen. His balcony door was slightly open, the curtain shifting lazily with the breeze. The steam curling up from the cup told me it had been placed there recently. Someone had just been drinking from it, and it sure as hell was not me. The thoughts started coming fast. Too fast. My mind dug up little details I had overlooked, small things that had felt unimportant at the time, but now painted an entirely different picture. Claire's showers in the middle of the day, even when she had nowhere to go. The way she always kept her phone face down on the counter, silencing notifications with a quick, effortless tap of her finger. The way she had been humming lately, moving through the apartment lighter, happier, like some weight had been lifted. And now this. I felt my jaw tighten as I took one last, slow sip of my coffee, my fingers gripping the mug harder than necessary. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need an argument. I already knew. I stepped back inside, the air in our apartment feeling suddenly stifling. The kitchen was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I walked toward the cupboard where we kept the mugs, pulling the cabinet open, my stomach twisting. 1, 2, 3, 4. There should have been 5. I was still standing there, staring at the empty space where the missing cup should have been, when I heard the front door unlock. Claire walked in, looking just as she always did, hair in a loose ponytail, wearing her usual yoga leggings and a fitted sweatshirt, a water bottle in one hand, phone in the other. Normal. Too normal. "Hey," she said casually, kicking off her sneakers without looking at me. "I just had a quick walk. It is already getting hot out." I did not answer. I just watched her as she moved around, heading straight to the fridge. She was acting so casual, so at ease. "You eat yet?" she asked as she pulled out a bottle of iced coffee, twisting off the cap. I was thinking of making eggs or something. My chest felt tight, but I kept my voice even. "How was your walk?" She did not hesitate. "Good. Just went down to the park and back." I nodded slowly, scanning her face. No sweat, no sign she had been outside in the heat. She was lying to my face. I glanced down at her phone, still in her hand. She never put it down lately. Always close by. Always flipped over when she set it down. She leaned against the counter, sipping her drink. "What's up?" I almost laughed at how casual she sounded. Like nothing was wrong. Like I did not know. For a second, I imagined confronting her right there, grabbing her by the wrist, pulling her out onto the balcony, pointing straight across to Dan's place. Watching her try to explain how our chipped coffee mug had ended up over there. But I did not, because I wanted more than an argument. I wanted to see her squirm. So I smiled, just a small, tight-lipped grin, and turned back toward the table. She went on talking about nothing. Something about picking up groceries later, maybe stopping by that boutique she liked. I barely listened. My thoughts were somewhere else. With him, Dan, the guy who had always been just a friendly neighbor. The guy who had waved at me in the hallway, who had helped me jumpstart my car last winter. The guy who always seemed to linger when he talked to Claire, holding her attention just a little too long. Had it been going on for weeks? Months? Had it started slow? An innocent conversation in the hallway? An offer to help carrying groceries? And then what? Did she invite him inside while I was at work? Did they sit at my table, drinking coffee from my mugs? The thought made my stomach twist. I needed answers. But more than that, I needed to see it with my own eyes. So I waited. I moved through the rest of the morning as if nothing was wrong. I kissed her goodbye when she left for yoga, told her I would be working from home. She smiled at me, eyes soft and easy, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. But I knew better now. I was going to find out the truth. This time, I was not going to ignore the signs. This time, I was going to catch her. The apartment felt different after she left. Heavier somehow, like the walls had closed in. The silence was thick, not the peaceful kind, but the type that makes your skin crawl, like something was lurking just beneath the surface. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the door she had just walked out of, my mind running in circles. She was gone, and I was alone with the truth. I glanced at my phone. 9:12 a.m. She had yoga at 9:30. At least, that was what she had told me. I stepped out onto the balcony again, the morning sun pressing down on me, too warm for the time of day. My eyes flicked toward the neighboring apartment, the one across the alley. That same coffee mug was still there, perched on the railing like it was taunting me. The steam was gone now, but the sight of it still sent a slow burn through my chest. I scanned Dan's balcony, his windows, his door. His curtains were drawn now, shutting out any view inside. I stood there for a long time, gripping the railing, my heart a heavy drum in my ears. I could get in my car, drive to the yoga studio, and see for myself if she was actually there. But something about that felt beneath me, like I was the one who had to chase the truth when it should have been staring me in the face all along. No, I was not going to play detective, following her around town, peeking through windows like some fool. That was not how you catch someone like her. You wait, because people who think they're getting away with something, they get sloppy. They start to slip piece by piece when they believe no one is watching. And I was watching. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, not really reading anything. My mind was somewhere else, turning over every little moment from the past few months, every sign I had ignored. The sudden need for midday showers, the extra effort in her appearance, new clothes, makeup, perfume she never used to wear. At first, I had thought it was for me. She had asked if I liked a certain dress, if I noticed the scent she was wearing. I had smiled, kissed her, told her she looked beautiful. Was that a test? Was she checking to see if I still noticed her? Or had she already made up her mind and was just covering her tracks, hiding in plain sight? I exhaled through my nose, my fingers gripping the phone a little tighter. I had trusted her, and she had turned me into a fool. I checked the time again. 10:24 a.m. She would not be home for at least another half hour. And that was when an idea hit me. The coffee cup. If it was really ours, if it was really from our kitchen, then it should still be here. I pushed back from the table and walked over to the cupboard, my stomach already tightening. I pulled open the door, my eyes moving over the shelves. 1, 2, 3, 4. There should have been 5. I let out a slow breath through my nose. So it was ours. I did not know what I expected to feel. Maybe relief, maybe confirmation. But all I felt was something heavier, something colder. I ran a hand through my hair, my jaw tightening as I stepped back from the cupboard. My eyes flicked toward the bedroom. I never snooped, never felt the need to. That was what insecure husbands did, the ones who let jealousy turn them into paranoid, desperate men. But I was not paranoid. I was right. So I walked straight into the bedroom and pulled open the closet. Everything was exactly as it should be. Her dresses hung in neat rows, her shoes lined up at the bottom. Nothing out of place. But that did not mean anything. I crouched down, reaching toward the back, running my hand over the empty space between the shoes, feeling for something that did not belong. My fingers brushed against soft fabric. I pulled it out. A towel, folded neatly, tucked away like it had been hidden. I almost laughed. A towel? That was nothing. Maybe she had thrown it in there without thinking. But then I unfolded it, and my stomach dropped. Inside, carefully wrapped, was a man's t-shirt. Not mine. Dan's. I knew it was his because I had seen him wearing it before. Just last week, standing outside his door, chatting with another neighbor like he had nothing to hide. I held it up, staring at it like it might explain itself, my fingers gripping the soft fabric, my pulse pounding. There was no reason for his shirt to be in my wife's closet. None. I turned it over, my breath catching in my throat. There was a faint stain on the collar. Lipstick. Her lipstick. I knew it because I had kissed that shade off her lips 100 times before. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the fabric until my knuckles turned white. This was not a suspicion anymore. This was not paranoia. This was proof. And suddenly, all the patience, all the restraint I had forced myself to hold on to, it shattered. She had been sleeping in my bed and hiding his clothes in our closet. I dropped the shirt onto the floor like it burned me. And then I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that did not belong in my throat. She thought she was so careful. Thought she had me fooled. But she had made one mistake. She had forgotten what kind of man she married. Because if she thought I was going to be the kind of husband who confronted her in some emotional, teary-eyed argument, if she thought I was going to let her cry, let her spin some ridiculous excuse, she was dead wrong. I was done waiting. Now, it was my turn to play the game, and she was not going to like my rules. I did not move for a long time. I just stood there, staring at the shirt on the floor, my mind a storm of memories, questions, and something even darker, certainty. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not something I could explain away. My wife had brought his shirt into my home, hidden it in our closet, and thought I would never find it. And I almost did not. I let out a slow breath through my nose, forcing my hands to unclench. My fingers ached from how tightly I had been gripping the fabric. I should have been angry, but I was not. Not yet. Anger was hot. What I felt now was cold. Calculated. I was not just some betrayed husband, lashing out in blind rage. That was what she expected. That was why women like her thought they could get away with this kind of thing, because they knew men would react emotionally. Shouting, crying, begging. Not me. She had no idea that the moment I saw that coffee cup, the game had changed. I was not playing to lose. I picked up the shirt, folded it neatly, and placed it back inside the towel. Then I put it exactly where I'd found it, tucked away in the corner of the closet. She did not need to know I had seen it. Not yet. Instead, I walked back into the kitchen, grabbed my coffee, now completely cold, and dumped it down the sink. I rinsed the mug, set it back in the cabinet, and checked my phone. 10:58 a.m. She would be home soon. I took a slow breath and rolled my shoulders back. The worst thing I could do now was act any differently. If I even hinted that something was off, she would notice. She would get cautious. And I needed her to feel comfortable. I needed her to believe she was still in control. So I went about my day like nothing had changed. I wiped down the kitchen counters, answered a few work emails, even flipped through channels on the TV, though I could not tell you what was playing. My body was still, but my mind was working. I was planning, because this was no longer about figuring out if she was cheating. I already knew. Now, I needed to see how deep the betrayal went. And when I had everything I needed, I was going to burn it all to the ground. 11:34 a.m. The front door opened. I kept my eyes on the TV, pretending I was absorbed in whatever nonsense was on the screen. She walked in like it was any other day, dropping her gym bag by the door, stretching her arms over her head. "That class killed me today," she groaned, rolling her shoulders. "I swear my legs are going to give out." I turned my head and gave her a lazy smile. Yeah, she said, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge and taking a long drink. "I need to go more often. My form is a mess." I nodded, watching her carefully. There was no guilt in her expression, no hesitation in her voice. She was good at this. Too good. If I had not seen that coffee cup, if I had not found that shirt, I would have believed her. "Did you eat yet?" she asked, plopping down next to me on the couch. "Not yet," I said, stretching my arms out, acting as if I was completely relaxed. "Figured I'd wait for you." She smiled. "That's sweet." I nearly laughed. Sweet. That was what she thought I was. A sweet, trusting husband who had no idea what was happening right under his nose. I leaned over and kissed the top of her head. "You smell good." She giggled, swatting my arm. "It's sweat, babe." I grinned and shook my head. "Nah, it's that perfume you always wear." She softened, her smile growing. You always notice the little things. Yeah, and that was her mistake. The afternoon was normal. Too normal. We made lunch together, talked about weekend plans, even joked around like we always did. I played my role perfectly, because I was not just waiting anymore. I was watching. Every glance at her phone, every time she checked the clock, every extra second she spent in the bathroom with the door locked. She thought she was being careful, but now I knew what to look for. And when she finally excused herself to take a quick nap, I did not hesitate. As soon as the bedroom door shut, I moved. Fast. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, face down. For the first time in months, she had left it unattended. I did not waste a second. I grabbed it, pressed the power button. The lock screen lit up. No notifications. Of course. She had turned them off. Smart, but not smart enough. I set the phone back down exactly how she had left it and walked to the bedroom door, pressing my ear against the wood. Silence. She was not asleep. She was waiting. I smirked. She had no idea the real game had just started. And this time, I was not going to lose. I stepped away from the door, my mind already 3 moves ahead. She was awake in there. I knew it. She never took naps in the middle of the day. Not unless she was exhausted. But she was not exhausted. She was waiting. For what? For me to leave? For a message she did not want me to see? Maybe she thought she had time to clean up whatever mess she had made before I started to suspect something. Too bad for her. I was already ahead. I did not go far. Just to the bathroom, where I shut the door but did not lock it. I turned the sink on, letting the water run just loud enough to be a distraction. And then I waited. Waited to see if she would take the bait. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Then 2. And then, there it was. A soft creak of the bedroom door opening. I kept my breathing steady, my pulse even, standing just out of sight of the mirror so she would not see my reflection from the hallway. The sound of bare feet against the floor, moving toward the kitchen. She had taken the bait. I heard the faintest rustle, fabric brushing against the counter. Then the sound of her phone being picked up. A pause. Then a soft click as the bedroom door shut again. I let out a slow breath, cracking my neck. So that was how she wanted to play it. Fine. I was better at this than she was. I waited another 5 minutes before shutting off the sink and stepping out like nothing had happened. When I passed the bedroom, I did not pause, did not hesitate, just kept walking to the living room, grabbing the remote like I had no idea she had just snuck out to check her phone. I was not stupid. She had been waiting for something. A message, a call, some kind of update from him. And now, she knew I had been near her phone. She was probably wondering, did I see something? Did I touch it? Did I know? Good. Let her wonder. Let her start to doubt how safe she really was. I leaned back on the couch, flipping through channels mindlessly. A minute later, the bedroom door opened again. This time, slower, like she was not sure how to act. I did not look up right away. Let her come to me. She stretched her arms over her head, letting out an exaggerated yawn. God, I didn't mean to sleep that long. I glanced at the clock. 40 minutes. You needed it, I said smoothly, glancing at her with a lazy smile. Looks like that yoga class wore you out. I listened to that breath, the way she exhaled carefully as if measuring the sound, making sure it was normal. She thought she had covered her tracks, that she had played her part well enough, that I had no idea. She was wrong. I kept my body still, my breathing steady, even as the anger coiled tighter inside me. She turned on her side, away from me, nestling into the blankets, like a woman with nothing to hide. Like a wife who had not just spent the last half hour scrolling through messages she would never let me see. I almost wanted to laugh. How easily she settled back in, convinced she had pulled it off again. But she did not realize something. She had just confirmed everything for me. She had just given herself away. She thought she was moving in silence. She thought I had no idea how calculated every move had been. But I had been watching for weeks. And now, I was ready to strike. I forced my breathing to deepen, slow and measured, like I had fallen into sleep. Let the minutes pass, stretching the silence until it wrapped around us both. Until I knew she was not getting back up. Then, just as carefully as I had before, I moved. Not toward her. Toward her phone. She had placed it back on the nightstand, screen down like always. She thought it was safe. I reached out, fingertips barely grazing the edge of it. And then, as lightly as a whisper, I lifted it. The weight of it in my hand sent a rush through me. I was holding the truth, but I could not open it. Not yet. Not without waking her. So I did the next best thing. I pressed the side button, just enough to make the screen glow. A single notification flashed before disappearing into darkness again. A text. A name. Rick. My breath stayed steady, my pulse did not. There it was. The confirmation. I did not need to open it. I did not need to see the words. Rick. That was enough. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been, lowering it so gently it made no sound. Then I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling, feeling the last shred of doubt inside me die. She was not just cheating. She was in love with the idea of getting away with it. But she would not. Not anymore. This was not about catching her red-handed. This was about destroying the little world she had built in the shadows. I did not just want to expose her. I wanted to watch it all fall apart in front of her. And I was going to make sure it did. By morning, everything would change. But she would not see it coming. Not until it was too late. She finally put her phone down and turned on her side, facing away from me, like she had nothing to hide. I stared at the ceiling, breathing slow and steady, waiting until her body relaxed. It took a few minutes, but eventually her breathing evened out. Maybe she had fallen asleep. Maybe she was pretending. Either way, I was not sleeping tonight. I kept my body still, my mind running through everything I had uncovered. The coffee cup on Rick's balcony, the missing mug from our set, the shirt tucked away in our closet, the way she constantly checked her phone, always making sure I was not looking. All of it pointed to one truth. She was lying to me. And not just about something small. She was betraying me. The thought burned deep in my chest. An ache that was not sadness, not heartbreak, but something darker. I had given her everything. Years of my life. My trust. My love. And she had thrown it away, laughing behind my back with a man who lived right across from us. I clenched my jaw, forcing my breathing to stay steady. If I confronted her now, she would deny it. She would cry, act hurt, twist it around like I was the bad guy. That was how these things always went, right? The cheater always had an excuse. Always had a reason why it was not what it looked like. I was not going to give her that chance. If she thought she had fooled me, if she thought she was so damn clever, she was about to learn how wrong she was. I waited until I was sure she was asleep, then slowly, carefully slid out of bed. She did not move. Good. I crept to the door, stepping lightly, making sure not to make a sound. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. I moved into the living room, my heart pounding hard and steady in my chest. Her phone was still on the counter where she had left it. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand. She had no idea I had been watching. No idea I knew she had checked in the middle of the night, deleting whatever message she had been waiting for. But now it was my turn. I pressed the side button. The screen lit up. Nothing. Of course. No notifications. No messages. She had been careful. She had changed the settings, so nothing showed up on the lock screen. Smart. She had been doing this long enough to cover her tracks. But I had my own tricks. I placed the phone back exactly as I had found it. Then I grabbed my own phone and walked to the window. I needed to see if Rick's lights were still on. I pulled the blinds back just enough to peek across the alley. Dark. His curtains were closed. No sign of movement inside. Had he been awake earlier? Had he been the one messaging her? Or was he asleep, dreaming about his next little meeting with my wife? I took a slow breath, rolling my shoulders. I was not going to drive myself crazy with questions. I was going to get answers. Tomorrow. But I was not just going to catch them. I was going to make them regret every second of what they had done to me. The next morning, I was up before she was. Not that I had slept. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, my thoughts a storm inside my head. The apartment was silent. Peaceful. It was all a lie. I had spent years believing this was my home. That we were happy. That we were building a life together. And now I could barely look at her without feeling sick. I heard her stir in the bedroom, shifting under the covers. Then soft footsteps as she made her way to the bathroom. She had no idea I had been up all night. She had no idea I was already setting things in motion. A few minutes later, she walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, stretching like she had no worries in the world. She smiled when she saw me. "You are up early." I nodded, sipping my coffee. Could not sleep. She tilted her head, watching me. "Something on your mind?" I almost laughed. "Something on my mind?" "Yeah, like the fact that my wife was cheating on me with the man who lived across the alley. Like the fact that I'd spent the last few months living in a lie. Like the fact that today I was going to turn the tables on her." But instead of saying any of that, I just smiled. "I have a lot to do today." She walked over, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. "Try not to overthink so much. I bet that is what you're hoping for." She poured herself a cup of coffee, moving around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. Like she had not snuck out of bed last night to check her phone. Like she had not spent months lying to my face. I leaned back in my chair, watching her carefully. "Might stop by and see Rick later." She froze. It was small, just a quick hesitation in the way she reached for the sugar, but I saw it. I sipped my coffee, pretending not to notice. She recovered quickly, forcing a casual tone. "Oh, what?" I shrugged. "He borrowed something a while back. Thought I would get it back." Another hesitation. Then she nodded, stirring her coffee a little too fast. "Yeah, sounds good." She knew. Maybe she did not know exactly what, but she knew something was coming. And that was exactly what I wanted. Let her feel it. Let her wonder. Let her try to figure out if I knew. I finished my coffee and stood up, rinsing my cup in the sink. Anyway, should not take long. She smiled, but it was tight. Forced. Like she was trying too hard to act normal. Good. Let her sweat. Because by the time today was over, she would never feel safe again. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps slow and measured, my mind clearer than it had been in weeks. Rick thought that was the end of it. Thought I was just a suspicious husband fishing for answers. That his pathetic denial was enough to shake me off. But he had no idea. He was already losing. The real game had just started. I stepped outside into the afternoon sun, the heat heavy on my skin, but I barely felt it. My mind was on one thing. Her. She'd been lying to me for months, coming home to our bed after being in his. She had looked me in the eyes, smiled at me, kissed me, played the role of the loving wife like it was second nature. And I had believed it. I let myself believe it. Not anymore. I got in my car, gripping the steering wheel tight. I could go home, confront her, lay everything out on the table. But that would be too easy. She needed to feel it first. Needed to know that the walls were closing in, that the life she had been living so comfortably was about to collapse. That no matter how careful she thought she had been, I caught her. I exhaled, loosening my grip, tapping my fingers against the wheel. I had to be smart about this. Had to play it right. I checked my phone. No messages from her. No missed calls. She had no idea what was coming. I started the car and drove, but not home. Not yet. Instead, I went somewhere I knew she wouldn't expect. The yoga studio. She said she went there every week. Said it was part of her routine. A way to stay in shape, clear her mind. But now, I wondered, was that just another lie? I pulled into the parking lot, scanning the cars. Hers wasn't there. Of course not. She was always so careful. I got out, walking inside, my heartbeat steady calm. The receptionist barely glanced up as I approached. A young woman, probably early 20s, typing something into a computer. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice casual. "My wife, Claire, comes here a lot. She left her water bottle at home, and I figured I'd drop it off." The receptionist barely blinked. "What's her last name?" I told her. She typed something into the computer, then frowned slightly. "I don't see her in today's class." I tilted my head. "Weird. She said she'd be here." The receptionist shrugged. "Maybe she meant another day. I can check her attendance history if you want." I smiled. "That'd be great." She clicked through a few screens, then nodded. "Yeah, looks like she hasn't checked in for about a month." A month. I kept my expression neutral. Huh. Must have gotten her schedule mixed up. She nodded, already back to typing. "Yeah, happens all the time." I thanked her and walked out, stepping into the heat of the afternoon. The second I was back in my car, I let out a slow breath. A month. She had been telling me she was going to yoga every week. And for a month, she hadn't been here once. I clenched my jaw, staring at nothing in particular. So where had she been going? I didn't need to guess. I already knew. Rick. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. All right. Time to move to the next phase. I drove home, keeping my speed steady, my hands loose on the wheel. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I had moved past anger. This was something else. This was control. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had already decided how this was going to end. She was inside, standing at the sink, washing a plate, humming softly to herself. Like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't living a lie. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. She turned, smiling. "Hey, you're home early." I smiled back. "Yeah, just wanted to spend the afternoon with my wife." She dried her hands, walking over, wrapping her arms around my neck. "That's sweet." I kissed her forehead, breathing her in. "You smell good," I said softly. She laughed. "You always say that." I pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. And then, still smiling, I asked, "How was yoga?" She blinked. "Good. Hard, though." "Lie." I tilted my head. "Oh, yeah? What was today's routine?" She hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. She recovered fast, rattling off something about stretching, about core work, about the instructor being tough. I nodded, watching her carefully. "Sounds intense." She smiled, relaxing. "Yeah, I'll definitely be sore tomorrow." "I bet you will." I let her go, walking past her into the kitchen, setting my keys on the counter. "So," I said casually, "I stopped by the studio today." Silence. I turned. She was frozen, just for a moment. Then she forced a laugh. "What? What?" "Wanted to drop off your water bottle," I said, shrugging. "Thought you might need it." I watched her carefully, the way her fingers curled slightly, the way her breathing changed just a little, the way her eyes flicked, just for a second, toward her phone on the counter. I smiled. "Oh," she said finally. "That was nice of you." "Yeah," I nodded. "But the weird thing is, they said you hadn't checked in for a month." Another pause. Tighter this time. Then, a quick laugh, a shake of her head. "Ugh, that system is so messed up. I swear I scan in every time." I nodded, letting the silence stretch. Then I stepped closer. She shifted, just slightly. "You don't have to lie," I said quietly. She swallowed. I'm not." Another step. Her breathing quickened. I reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, watching as she struggled to keep her expression neutral. "It's okay," I whispered. Her lips parted slightly. What do you mean?" I leaned in, close enough to feel her breath, close enough to see the pulse at her throat. "I know," I said. She stiffened, just slightly, but I felt it, saw the way her hands clenched, the way her shoulders tensed, and for the first time, real fear flickered in her eyes. She knew she was caught, but she had no idea just how bad this was about to get.